Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Games Up podcast. My name is Cameron McCulloch-Kibble, and it is the 17th of this fine month of June, which means that E3 has now been and gone. It was a wonderful time while it was here, but there's now only 360 days until the next one. The man you hear laughing there is Lewis. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm the man that laughs. I'm doing very well.
That's a very ominous title for you. Lewis, the man that laughs, Crawford.
Yes, the laughing man. Oh.
All right. So this show is going to be slightly different to our normal one. This show is going to be a sort of E3 wrap-up. We're going to go through our predictions. We're going to sort of review the whole show, who won, all that kind of jazz. But before we get into that, usually we have some news, and we are going to have some news here. Lewis, the first one is about Death Stranding, and the second one is about Cyberpunk, so I will let you grab those. These are your quick E3 updates. Hit me with them.
Right, so number one, Death Stranding is confirmed to have a gun. They kind of showed it in the trailer a little bit, but the trailer was a little bit confusing about what part we can actually play in the game. It seems likely that what we've seen so far is very much early stuff, and later on there will be more involvement with kind of gunplay of some sort. And it's been said that you can kill enemies, but you'll learn that it's not the best outcome. The game in general is about reconnecting the world, is what we've heard. And it is an open world title in some sense. There's a few different definitions for what that could mean, but yeah, that's mostly it. Sounds interesting. And then we heard from Cyberpunk that it's a first-person RPG. Something I think that was known about, but is now kind of double confirmed, I guess. And yeah, all the things that kind of come with that. I think it's quite a good choice for it being the Cyberpunk world, is to be really close up to it like that.
Yeah. And I think it's going to make because they talked about how the experience is going to be quite mature, like there's going to be full frontal nudity, and there's going to be a lot more violence, and there's going to be some quite intense kind of cityscapes. I think that makes it a much more kind of visceral experience if it's first person like that. Yeah, absolutely. Your third update this week is that there is no offline solo play in Fallout 76. There is online-only play, meaning that you can play entirely on your own single player, but you'll kind of have to be lucky with the worlds if you do so. You will always be online, and the chances are you will always be in a world populated by other people as well.
Yeah, that's never gone well for anyone. I don't know.
I'm still really excited for it, but this does temper my expectations slightly. Number 4 update is that Sekiro Shadows Die Twice has no kind of leveling up system, no armor, and no customization. Now, this may sound like a fairly small piece of news, but it's quite big when you consider that it's coming from Software, and that's kind of the staple of what they've done for the last few years, so it really is a big step away from the Souls franchise in more than just kind of combat and looks. It is in a very core mechanic way as well. Apparently the game will be very much about just your skills, no gimmicks and no stat gains, so hopefully many people will have a consistent experience throughout the game if they level their skills well enough in the real world.
I should say something I forgot to mention here is it also has no multiplayer, so it's entirely a single player title. There'll be no kind of connecting to other people like there are in the other game. But this actually kind of has me excited, not the lack of multiplayer, but just the fact that it kind of means everyone has a consistent experience, and it's not one of those situations where maybe if you've chosen a certain path, and when you end up going down the other path, you're now over leveled and everything's really easy, which I think happens sometimes in the Souls games. It's happened to me in a few places. Maybe I'm just really good. But this I think you won't get that.
Number 5, the No Spec artist community, which is it's a community of artists who work to try and get rid of no speculative artwork, which is basically like you'll be. I might have got that wrong, but the idea being that you'll be paid once the art is completed if it's good enough, and that happens a lot in art communities. That happens a lot in creative industries, where if the work is good enough you'll be paid, but if it isn't, it isn't. Could go on about this all day, but it's a really valid argument. The idea that Ubisoft had here is very clearly to get like fans at the forefront of the game, which I like. But yeah, it's a very valid argument that if you've got 400,000 people working on cool art and one person being picked, that's 399,000 people who deserve a little bit more respect than that.
Yeah, I'm in two minds about it because I understand the arguments from the no spec community, but I think it's important to note that this isn't really Ubisoft asking like, we want we want art for our game. We can't be bothered to pay artists, so we'll get like some people in. I think it's more. I mean, yes, that is. It's more that like they want to get people involved so that they can go. I've got my art in this game, or I'm a big fan of Beyond Good and Evil. Here's like I don't know, my drawing of a character in that world or something.
Yeah, I think
I don't know.
I'm sure the intention was really good, and I like the idea of giving sort of devaluing creative powers to the fans and giving them a chance to, start and get their break in this stuff. But I have particular gripes with the media and creative industries in this sense, and it puts Ubisoft in a very privileged position where they can look through artists who have put in the effort, but might have 99% of the skills and still not pay them, and that is. It's not a particularly dodgy thing because they were never going to pay them in the first place, right? If they did this more traditionally, but they have got the privilege of having access to hundreds and thousands more artists as a result of it. So it's a tough thing to balance. I hope they're nice and transparent with this, but we'll see. And finally, number 6, Telltale has announced that they are making a new series based on Stranger Things. This feels like a pretty perfect mix for them, like mid-80s stuff, 80s culture, great cyberpunky kind, well, not cyberpunk, but like neon-y, punky kind of stuff, great. Netflix-style dramas, episodic kind of dramas, great. And a good video game company, excellent. Like, that's all good.
Yeah, sounds like a good thing, and I think you and me both kind of really like this type of game, so yeah.
So that wraps up your E3 updates, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the tiny bits of news that you might have missed. And now it's time for our E3 update. Lewis, what did you think of E3 this year?
I think this has been probably one of my favourite years of the last two. The last three, I should say. Actually, not the last two. That just sounds silly. But it's the best one of the last three. And we'll kind of go into it a bit more. But overall, I think there's been a lot shown this year. Last year had a bit of a dirge of games, and some people claim there was loads of games, and then there wasn't so much. We'll get onto that. But yeah, I think overall a good year. Not a great year for shocking huge announcements, but a great year for just here's stuff you wanted to see. Here's we are working on this, or we are doing this. Here's an update from what we're doing, or here's a release date. And there's been a lot of that. I think we have had E3s where there's been no release date announcements for anything. So yeah, this is better.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think it was a solid year. I think there was some really good stuff shown off. There were a couple of surprises. Nothing, as you say, mind-blowingly. Nothing 2015 or 2016 level. Yeah, just a really goddamn strong, solid year. Some great conferences from some really interesting experimental conferences from others, which are worth it in the long run because they do give us an option to see what E3 can do or can be and where it goes, and that's a good thing. So in the year to experiment, this was probably one of the better ones.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I think probably there was only sort of 2 conferences that really flopped, and I don't think there was too much expectation going into them. One certainly more so than the other. Yeah, a damn solid year. Do you have a game of E3 or a couple of games of E3 stuff that you're really looking out for?
Yeah, but I'm a Sony fanboy, so So, oh no, they're literally all of them. So Resident Evil 2 which was again shown at Sony's. Spider-Man I'm really into, and Last of Us 2 I'm really into. The other 2 from there, I mean, I'm interested in Death Stranding as well. But that's more I'm just interested to see as opposed to something I'm hugely hyped for.
Mm-hmm.
Assassin's Creed Odyssey is high up on the list. And then there's a few others, but I guess we didn't get to see too much of. So Cyberpunk, which we'll probably see more at Gamescom. And a few other small things. I probably missed loads of stuff, but yeah, there was a lot this year.
Any kind of announcements around games? So hardware announcements, business announcements, anything like that surprised you? Or
I suppose, well, so I think, Microsoft were quite clear about they are working on Xbox hardware.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they kind of want to force a hand with that announcement, if you like.
Yeah.
I think they know that kind of we said before Sony have done very well by being the second to announce, but the first to release, or the second to announce generally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder whether Microsoft isn't saying you better be working on this because we've got ours. Because I think, I mean, this is meta stuff now at this stage, but Sony wants to wait as long as possible because that gives them the best advantage over the Xbox One X. So if Microsoft is we're going to release soon, then Sony's in a position where they have to kind of go, all right, we have to kind of respond to this sooner rather than later.
Mm.
But that's kind of, kind of meta stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's a very delicate balancing act. In the years that Microsoft has come out first, specifically at launch, we've seen them do very well, and the Wii had a year on everyone else, and it succeeded. The 360 had some time on the PS3, and it succeeded quite well. So yeah, you're right. Absolutely, it's trying to force a hand, and I think a lot of that conference was trying to force a hand. For me, my game of the show was Beyond Good and Evil. I was really glad to see them nail that tone again, nail that look again. And we only saw little bits of gameplay, only saw vertical slices. But if they do nail what gameplay we saw, then I'm all in. In the more immediate future, my games of the show would be Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Absolutely all in for that game. And I think going backwards in time to Greece and that the connotations of the lore and the future storyline and the ones who came before and all that jazz, that's very exciting for me.
Yeah, I think just quickly on Assassin's Creed, I think we're kind of just admitting now that we're kind of leaving Assassin world in some sense. I think the thing is that it's such a time departure, I guess, from Origins, which is meant to be the Origins, and then it's Odyssey's before that. And you get the impression from the trailer that we are very much, just Spartan. And I'll be honest, I'm okay with it. I'm in two minds about it, but at the same time, I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult question to answer if the assassins don't exist yet. How do you be the assassin of this Assassin's Creed without them being there yet? And I think I'm interested as to how they answer it because I'm very, very attached to Assassin's Creed.
Yeah,
although I've been playing Syndicate this week, and that could very quickly detach me because that game's pissing awful.
There's a moment in the trailer though where it looks like he's going to do an air assassination, land on someone, and he just smashes his spear down on the ground and knocks everyone out back. And that kind of really makes me go, are we really an assassin? Or are we, just massive Spartan army kind of guy?
One of the statues. Oh, that's worrying, but we're still recording, so okay. One of the statues that you can get with the game does have a full assassin's armor or a full assassin's outfit. Okay. And so I think I don't think it will stray quite as far as possible. Maybe they'll establish what will become the Magi, or they'll establish whatever. But the other way I can see it going, and I highly doubt they'll do it because it would take a massive risk from Ubisoft, and I would love them for it. This would gain my hugs and cuddles all the rest of the time. But is if we're going backwards deliberately, so if we're going closer and closer to the first civilization, maybe we got a lot more the ones. So if you don't know about Assassin's Creed, to sum it up very quickly, the idea is that there was a civilization before us that left messages for our civilization to avoid a big, terrible thing that happened. But they were very advanced and had a lot of technology and left a lot of cool clues in the world. And they're very mythical. We got a lot more ones who came before stuff in Origins than we've had for a while. And going further back to Greece, and that weapon they showed off in the trailer seems very Isu to me. So I kind of like the idea that maybe they introduce Juno and so on and so forth as characters that the people worshipped, and then we get their origin story as the ones who came before. Anyway, I love that idea. I'm also very, very excited for Rage, especially now that they've confirmed that it's not an online thing, it's a single-player entirely thing. I love the gameplay of Rage, but I was so worried that it was going to be a kind of Destiny-ish thing, because it very easily could be, and the fact that it's not has me all in. Super fucking excited for that game. Overcooked 2, I will have on launch day, and it's kind of cheesy, and I was always going to go for it, but Spyro, I think, looked really good. I'm also kind of excited for Gears, but that's a very early stage, so what that game actually looks like when it comes out next year, we'll see.
Quickly talking of Gears, actually, since it's something I can talk on.
Yeah.
Seems like they're going for like a much more story side now.
Yeah.
I think something that was like in the other games, but not to that level. The trailer of this seems to kind of go, there is a deep story. Also, it's not maybe as masculine a fest as it's kind of touted to be previously, especially because obviously the trailer they showed is a female character.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think I've heard some mixed opinions on that, just because gamers. It's just true. But if that is actually the direction they're going in, all the more for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the trailer shifted the tone forward in a good way, and I think Gears has needed that for a while. I think having a female main character for the games is something I've wanted for a long, long time. I really wanted to see Anya take a much more forefront part of the games of the last trilogy, and we didn't see that, so I'm very excited for that. I didn't ever play Gears 4, but I intend to this year at some point to get myself ready, because I am quite excited for that game. But yeah, what we saw was very much a vertical slice, and it could be that it misses the mark next E3 or when it does come out, so it being a year and a bit away, it's sort of tempered excitement, but excitement nonetheless. And then also, there's now a Nintendo Switch in my household, so Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu, because yum yum yum, yes please.
You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, Jess got a Switch for her birthday.
Awesome.
Dude, it's so good. It's a very cool console. Yeah, so now that we've done that, we're going to sort of go through our predictions, score up some points, see who wins, and the winner will be the first person who gets to then say who won E3 for them. Ooh. So we'll go through our predictions one by one. For EA, I said that their conference struggles hugely. Lots of multiplayer focus, very little single-player stuff, and just generally a bit of a flop. I'm not going to give myself a point here because they did announce a couple of interesting single-player things that I'll get onto in a second. And once their conference was a flop, I would argue it wasn't the biggest flop in E3. So 0 points to me. Lewis, you predicted Dragon Age 4. 0 points to you.
0 points.
My second prediction was they do not announce a new EA indie game. I was so wrong. They announced 2. Lewis, you said PvZ Garden Warfare 3. Both of us wrong there. And our final prediction was I thought they were going to save it with an announcement of a new Bounty Hunter game. They didn't do that. You said some kind of announcement, but something Star Wars. I will leave it in your control here. You can have a point because they did announce a Star Wars thing. You can have a half point because they announced a Star Wars title, not really anything of any substance, or 0 points at all. What do you think is fair?
I'd go 0.
0, okay.
Yeah.
So
just to round up on EA as well, actually.
Yeah.
So EA's conference was what I would like to call. I got the impression that someone had told to organize it like a week before. The whole conference was just full of moments of like, why are you in, so with the Star Wars reveal, when they revealed the title of this game.
Yeah.
Normally, most companies, the way they reveal a title, they'd have like a glitzy trailer. You'd zoom in and it would go, Star Wars, Jedi, what's it called? Fallen Order?
Fallen Order, yeah.
Yeah, and you'd have that title and you'd be like, it's that game, oh my God, whatever. EA decided just to kind of like talk to the guy in person, and he just kind of went, Jedi Fallen Order, that's the new game. Dark times.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate and defend them here a little bit. Vince Zampella from Respawn. Respawn have always been the least EA of EA Studios. They made Titanfall, and that was probably the most EA game they've made, as in it was multiplayer only. but it was also a console exclusive and openly supported in that way. Titanfall 2 has like one of the most revered shooter story campaigns in recent history, which is so interesting. But I do think that company's been quite open and personable with things, so I think them just sort of being on stage as a person and saying, hey, we have a title, but we're not ready to show more yet, was kind of actually the right move at the time. Like, I think if EA had come out with a glitzy title, a glitzy trailer of like some stars, a ship, a lightsaber, and then Jedi Fallen Order, people would have been more burned by the fact it's 2019 than the fact right now it's just words.
Okay, I can see that, but then there's other things like for Star Wars Battlefront, when they showed that off, they had like these 10-second loops that repeated twice or 3 times. Like they literally had like a 10-second loop of footage while they were talking over it, and it repeated like again and again, and then like switched to another 10-second loop that repeated again and again. And then like they announced that Star Wars Battlefront's getting what's it, Tatooine like maps? Is it?
Was it solo DLC, wasn't it?
Yeah, as well as that. There was a few other things, but yeah, like solo DLC was one of them, and then also Clone Wars.
Oh yeah.
And during the Clone Wars thing was like no footage of anything from that thing, and they announced that General Grievous would be in it, and they showed
everyone's favorite prequel character.
Yeah, they showed like a little face shot of him, and then like they also announced that you'd have young Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan, which didn't get face shots. It was still just General Grievous when they announced that, and I was like, that's an interesting like state of events where they haven't got like art for these 2 characters, but they do for one of the characters, and I'm like, seems like something you would do if you were announcing something, and you wouldn't just show like this is exactly what I mean. You wouldn't just show like 10-second footage on a loop. You would show something else, even just like one of your own trailers.
I mean, the EA, yeah, I get what you mean. The EA conference seems like it was a little bit. The problem, I think, is that by doing EA Play, they've really put the impetus on themselves to not be buoyed up by E3. Like they've always put the impetus on themselves to be something different and something interesting, and so I don't think people go into it with the same expectations as they do for an E3 conference. And in a way, I'd kind of like to see EA go, like, put their mistakes in their hands and go, okay, well, that didn't work. We're still going to do an EA Play thing outside of E3, but here's our E3 showcase. I'd like them to sort of come crawling back, as it were. I will say, though, big shouts to Andrea Renee. Not that she'll ever fucking hear this, but she's an awesome presence in the gaming industry, and it's such a shame when an awesome presence hosts a conference that doesn't go well, because that really tars their presence for a bit. And you can see the same from Aisha Tyler for as many years on Ubisoft and so on. They're really good people who just get put in a tough situation with slightly awkward or slightly slow or whatever conferences. So great person, go support her regardless of EA. More predictions. Here we go. So we're currently on a big ol' zilch from EA. Microsoft. My first prediction was Gearbox take the stage to reveal Borderlands 3. Big ol' fucking zilch on that one. Yours was big focus on Games Pass. I think you deserve a half for this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They did do a big kind of reminder that Game Pass existed.
Yeah.
Which was something I was expecting a lot.
I think I'd have probably been all in for a whole point had they announced more kind of, and it's on Games Pass right now, but there were only kind of 3 big Games Pass announcements for the minute, so I think a half's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
Number 2, Xbox unveils a host of new exclusive: Gears of War 5, Recore 2, a new Perfect Dark, a new Fable, at least one new Forza game, and Battletoads. So half of these happened. Gears 5, a new Forza game, Battletoads, and a Halo 6 tease for the next game.
I feel like you should get like a quarter of no. It's like I can give you half. Like I get that half of them happened, but then the other half a new Forza game, which is like a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
And then Halo and Gears, where it's like, yeah, it was about time.
I'm not saying that my prediction wasn't cheap. I'm just saying that it happened.
Battletoads is great. Okay, you get that.
Okay.
Get half, whatever.
I don't. All right.
Something was live right now, wasn't it? Or was that at EA?
No, nothing was live right now from Xbox, I don't think.
Oh, it was EA actually.
It was
It's
Unravel 2.
Unravel. Yeah,
Yarny 2.
yeah, me too.
Crackdown 3 and it's live right now was not the case for you, I'm afraid.
No.
Now, I'm really interested in your response to this one. My third prediction was From Software joined the stage to announce a new game. It is Shadows Die Twice. With a heavy Japanese influence, it comes to Xbox first.
It's one of those, like, if you'd shortened your prediction,
I know.
you'd get a whole point.
Half on that one?
Yeah, sure.
Yay.
Maybe you can give yourself 3/4. I don't know.
I'm not
Make it
going
really
that
confusing.
heavily into fractions, and Fable 4
Yeah.
was not announced, unfortunately. So,
No.
then we're into Bethesda. Bear with me 2 seconds. I want to just talk quickly about Bethesda because we did our predictions a month before E3. So lots of people would say, hold on, but Rage 2 was announced 2.5 weeks before. Yeah, but we predicted this long before. So, Rage 2, very different looking from the original, out this year. Looks like a cross between Destiny and Doom. The only thing I fucked up was out this year. I'm calling that a half.
Okay. Yeah, all good.
And then you have Starfield, 100% announced. Well done. That's a full-on point.
Yeah, I suppose.
What would you not class that?
No, I would. It's just,
It's like they announced a title screen, right?
they announced nothing really, but
Speaking of announcing nothing, Elder Scrolls, the next one is being worked on, not releasing this year. Giving myself a full one for that.
yeah, full point for you.
Prey DLC, you're also a full point for that. That was a good one. The next one was, my final one was Fallout New Something announced, a spiritual sequel to New Vegas out this year. A new Fallout was announced, it's out this year, but it's not a spiritual sequel to Vegas, and it's not called Fallout New Something, so I don't really know on that one. You absolutely nailed Doom 2, though it's called Doom Eternal. What do you think on my one?
Yeah. What's that?
What do you think on my one? Half or zero?
Half.
Okay.
Because I'm nice. Just because I'm nice.
You are lovely. Number 4, Just Cause 4, and it's probably going to be shit. I'm actually not sure about it being shit. The new engine, I find a good thing. A very good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So Just Cause 4, I get the point there. Life is Strange 2, I kind of want to give you a half on that. Like, they announced the precursor to Life is Strange 2. I think that's fair.
Because we could have seen nothing from them, and we still saw something from Life is Strange.
Well, yeah, and they went quite a way to pointing out it is the start of Life is Strange 2. So that's a big thing, I think. Big Kingdom Hearts 3 talk for me. I'm taking a point there. Yoko Taro didn't show up, did he?
So sad.
Very little showed up at Square Enix. And then both of us get 0 for Chrono Break is officially announced. And Final Fantasy 15 ported to something. Ubisoft, I think we get very little in this one here. Big Far Cry update was my first one. Did not happen in the slightest. Splinter Cell was yours. 0s all round. Assassin's Creed tease was my first prediction. I'm going to give myself a half for that because I think we didn't expect to see Assassin's Creed this year. Me and you didn't especially. So I'm giving myself a half.
No.
And you 100% win a point for Beyond Good and Evil. And then my final prediction, Splinter Cell, nothing. Yours just says Division 2, but I'm assuming it's like a big gameplay thing of Division 2. Which is absolutely what happened. So well done. PC Gaming Show. I
don't think either of us watched it, so...
I watched it, but
really?
It was dry. We both get 0 points all round here. I think, anyway. Nintendo. This is an interesting one. A new Star Fox game is announced. Did not happen, basically, in the slightest.
Yeah,
Starlink got Star Fox, but yeah, no, that's not the same thing. Lewis, you say massively disappointing. I don't know how we quantify this, but I would argue that it was one of the least disappointing of E3 this year.
I think... it's a tough one, actually, because I think while it wasn't massively disappointing, I still think it's like they didn't change much in terms of like the whole, does Nintendo have much after, after Smash Bros. Comes out? That was kind of one of the things that I had going into E3 was, are they going to announce Animal Crossing, Pokemon RPG, more of that? And I'm like, in some senses I was disappointed, but not enough to kind of say, give me a point or give me half a point. So I don't really know. It's a tough one.
I know what you mean. I think there was a lot of stuff in there that did talk about their wider stuff coming. We'll get into that in a minute. Sorry about that. We lost audio for a second there. No worries. We are back to it. So, my second prediction was that we see Super Smash Brothers. It's talked about in great detail, and it's not a port. It's a new game built from the ground up for Switch. That right there is a mark on the chalkboard. I will take a point on that one. Thank you very much. You didn't have a second prediction, so that's that. And again, the next Pokemon game is shown off for the first time. It's a full 3D RPG. Think Pokemon Generations, but not illegal. We recorded this long before Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee was announced. And I'm going to give myself a point here. It's not Pokemon Generation 8. It's not Pokemon Switch. But it is a 3D RPG that's like Pokemon Generations and the next in the Pokemon franchise. I will take that one. And then your predictions where we see Pokemon Switch and Animal Crossing Switch. We only saw Pokemon Switch, didn't see Animal Crossing Switch.
Yeah.
So
I think there was many people were wanting Animal Crossing, but it wasn't there this time.
Yeah. I wonder if we see an Animal Crossing mobile game again before we see Animal Crossing Switch. I don't know, maybe. Then we get into what was the most interesting show, interesting in inverted commas, Sony. My first prediction, spoilers, I get no points here. My first prediction is Red Dead Gameplay Zone, big ol' zilch. Your first prediction was RE2 Remake, which you absolutely nailed. Well done, sir.
Yes.
My second prediction was Crash Team Racing Remake announced, big ol' zilch. Your prediction, now
Nah.
My instinct is to give you a 0 on this, is that Devil May Cry 5 is announced. It was announced, just not on their stage.
Yeah.
So that's a zilch, but it's a close zilch. And then the final predictions were Warner Brothers Montreal to take the stage to reveal Arkham Origins trilogy. Again, big ol' zilch. Shenmue 3, big ol' zilch. So let's move on from that. And our final predictions were just bonus predictions, kind of, can this happen anywhere? My first one was Rocksteady reveal their new game, big ol' zilch. Although there was so much hype around Rocksteady being there. I am slightly worried about Rocksteady in a bit. Not in a big way, but I do hope we hear from them soon.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
I guess it's better that they take the time they need to make something. I would rather they take 4 years and it be great, but I hope it's for the right reasons. Then your first prediction was a Super Duper Man game. Again, big ol' zilch.
Yeah, similar.
Telltale announces a new series based on Charlie Brooker's Black Mirror. Telltale did announce a new series. It was from a Netflix exclusive, but I'm pulling at straws here. That's a zilch. Lewis, you predicted that THQ Nordic were lying to all of us and that Darksiders 3 was there. Big ol' zilch.
Big zilch.
My third prediction was that Vanquish 2 is real and it's an exclusive to Xbox. Again, big ol' zilch. Your prediction was just not that. I'm not going to justify that. That's a 0.
That's our whole point, that is.
That's I don't think you could win this game by having predictions for nothing.
Yeah.
And our final ones were, I predicted we were going to see perhaps a Deep Silver conference. Big ol' zilch. You predicted we would see a lot from Cyberpunk 2077. That's a point to you. So, you entertain the folks for a second while I wrap this up.
Oh my god. The completely just thrown into the deep end. Yeah, so earlier on I was talking about this E3, and I think something that was very interesting was just the kind of lack of stuff we thought was going to be there. There were so many things that weren't there this year that were highly anticipated or highly expected, like, Rocksteady, as we mentioned, the Avengers game that Square Enix are working on, as well as just a whole heap of titles like Fable 4 from Microsoft. Anyway, there's lots of different titles that we kind of expected to hear from. And so while the E3 was really good in terms of the games that were shown, there are so many things that we just kind of haven't heard from or wonder about or are waiting for. And I have to wonder whether that there's a reason for that. Like, the Avengers game is something that really we need to see soon. And same with Rocksteady. It's something that we really need to see soon. It's something that's been on the go for a long time now. Rocksteady especially. So yeah, overall this E3 was really good, but there's a lot that we're waiting on. So much.
What would be your I wish we could see that thing?
More Death Stranding. Uh, I don't know, probably actually something for Nintendo.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What would, like, any kind of ideals from them, or just anything like unexpected?
I'd like to see an Animal Crossing, to be honest with you. It's something that I've played so much Stardew Valley that I want to kind of play one of the games that inspired it. Um, you know, Animal Crossing obviously kind of started, or it at least evolved that genre. And it's something that if a proper Animal Crossing game came out and not, the mobile game and not like, I think I played one on DS a long time ago. I'd be very interested in seeing a full title kind of made for, well, we can argue about current tech, but made for like stuff that's kind of recent. Because I think it's been a very long time since, like 10 years or something, since a proper Animal Crossing title was released. Um, so that's something I'd really be excited to see.
What could let me ask you a question. What could EA announce or do that would excite us for one of their conferences again?
um, actually show off footage for the Star Wars game um, would probably be a good start. Because at the moment, yeah, like EA's conference was interesting. They announced a lot, but they didn't really show much. They had the two indie games, obviously Yanni and another game I can't remember the name
Sea of
of.
Solitude.
Ah, yeah, that looked really interesting. And they did show a little bit of that. But just more and more stuff that would like excite, I guess, the fans of traditional EA. So things like Dragon Age is high up on that list. At the moment, we've kind of been running on Steam, and like the CA conference, we were watching obviously all the sports games, but then we were watching two people play Command and Conquer mobile game, which was definitely a low point,
Yeah.
to put it bluntly. Yeah.
Okay, the results are in. I came out of this E3 scoring 7.5 points on our predictions. Lewis, you take the trophy with 8.5 points. Congratulations!
Woo, I win.
You are the winner of all in the gaming industry. So, tell me this: who your prize is a chance to talk more. Who won E3 for you this year?
Who won E3? So, shall I wait for you to announce yours before I do a full wrap up, or should I do a full wrap up?
No, give me wrap it up full for me.
Okay, so I'm in an interesting position for announcing who was my favorite this year. Mostly because it's been an interesting year for people trying to prove things, I guess. You can argue that if we kind of went through EA, possibly this was their conference to prove that they were more interested in gamers and single player stuff, and they didn't really do that in any way. Microsoft was this year to prove that they had more games coming in terms of like more unique experience and more exclusives, and they kind of did it, but not really. They did it in terms of Halo, and really we were looking forward to seeing the myriad of titles that we'd kind of heard beforehand, like Fable and some other titles that were rumored to be in the works. They showed they bought more studios, but they were kind of all studios that are not bringing anything, or not as far as we know, or maybe they're far out. Which I think is interesting. I don't think that they really changed the game. There was a lot of Microsoft that was games are amazing. It's a great time to be alive to be in a gamer, but not much in terms of I should go buy an Xbox. Like this is, and they could have done it this year. I think they possibly had the potential this year to do that, or were expected to have the potential to do that, and they didn't really bring it in terms of I should buy an Xbox. Bethesda's we talked about how Bethesda's was interesting. Bethesda's was sort of quite flat, I think, for the most part, and then kind of going, here's two massive announcements, and neither of them are that, like, they're both like 5 years out or something. Square's was just not much. We'd seen most of it. Ubisoft was actually Ubisoft is probably my winner going through. Just because they showed what I was most interested in. Beyond Good and Evil 2 looked really interesting, and the new Assassin's Creed looked really good. I was less interested in Division 2, but especially because they did the whole, like, the canned voiceover, fake voiceover thing, which I never like. Um, it's always like you've never played a game before, have you? Sort of level. Like, you've never been online, have you? You've never talked to people online. Sort of levels of interaction. But oh wow! But the locale looked really interesting for that game, being in Washington DC, and kind of at the end of this little trailer, you're on Air Force One, and then you look out and it's the White House, and that kind of interests me as a topic. Whether I play it or not is a bit iffy, but yeah. So, and I've talked about Nintendo being kind of iffy with them. I really like them going through the Super Smash Bros. But if you cut out the Super Smash Bros. Stuff, there wasn't that much there. Now Sony's very interesting. So this is where you'll disagree with me, but it's fine. You're allowed to. Now I think Sony brought the best looking games and some of the most exciting stuff for me. But then at the same time, they had like the worst conference. I think that their conference was mostly because of this, like the way the conference was set up had like this huge like pause in the middle or pause at the start. It didn't do them any favors. If they'd kind of got rid of that, then maybe I would be a lot more positive about it. But I think their conference was one of the worst, but had some of the best stuff. It's kind of this is why it's weird for me, because in some ways I'd be like, oh, Sony's like, they had Resident Evil 2, they had Last of Us looked amazing, Ghost of Tsushima looked amazing, Spider-Man looked great, Death Stranding, we can talk about, but we can debate. But at the same time, it wasn't a great show because of the way that they'd organized it. So in all, I think if I was going to order them, let's say, it would be Ubisoft first, then Microsoft, then Sony. And then from there, it gets a little bit more iffy.
Okay. My order is quite different, but also quite similar. I have 3 winners this year because I think they all did a fairly similar thing. We wanted this year, as solid as it was, we were kind of building this year up to be like another 2015, another 2016 of, oh my god, I can't believe that's coming out. And it wasn't that. There weren't many announcements that made me think, oh, whoa. At first, my winner was Ubisoft. I thought they put on an incredibly solid show with games that looked really fantastic. And then I thought about it a little more. I wanted to see more exclusives from Microsoft, and I wanted to see more stuff that had an impact on the Microsoft ecosystem, and they didn't really bring that. But actually, there are a couple of little minuscule announcements that mean quite a lot. So Session and Tunic being exclusive at launch to them is actually quite a big thing, I think, and I think it will have more resonance than people think it will right now. I think there'll be sort of sleeper hits. I also wanted to see from Nintendo, crazy Metroid this and Pokemon that. But actually, the deep dive we got into Smash Brothers really, really, really excited me for that game. So my joint winners are Ubisoft, Microsoft, and Nintendo. I think they were all equally solid, equally exciting, brought enough new stuff to the plate, but nothing that won the show overall. My below that would be Sony. I thought they had an absolutely solid show. Their reveals were really great. The games that they brought to the stage were really great. I'm still a skeptic on Death Stranding, I'm afraid. I thought Ghost of Tsushima looks beautiful, but plays a little less interestingly than it looks. Had they had 1 or 2 more announcements on the caliber of Nier 2 and Resident Evil, they would have absolutely won E3 for me regardless of structure. But they were just a little bit flat overall. And then I thought Square Enix was a total fucking disaster. I really don't get why Square Enix did their own conference only to show up on everyone else's stage anyway. I don't understand why they put together a 30-minute presser of games that we either knew were coming already or had been announced in the conferences previously, and added nothing really to it.
Or the literal same trailer shown. Yeah,
so even the most interesting thing they exclusively had at their conference was Final Fantasy 14 cross Monster Hunter World, and if that had been at Sony, it would have had a much bigger impact. It would have had a bigger impact on the overall show for Sony. and it wouldn't have really taken much away from Square because it was still the only thing that they only showed off in their own press conference, but it wasn't there. Like, Octopath Traveler turned up at Nintendo, Kingdom Hearts 3 turned up at literally every stage. I kind of don't get why they did that. And they announced a bunch of stuff like Just Cause 4's out later this year and so on and so forth, but it would have worked more on other people's stages, and it did work more on other people's stages. Bethesda was fine. It was a very odd conference, it was a very weird conference, but I like that Bethesda do odd and weird. I'd much rather see them do that than EA kind of typical shareholder meeting. So overall, a strong E3. I have 3 joint winners, and nobody else really loses, but nobody else takes the crown very clearly either.
All good.
Yeah. I think that sums us up pretty nicely. Anything else you want to add about this year's E3?
I'm looking forward to the next one.
Aren't we all? And I hope, ladies and gentlemen at home, that you are too. If you are, remember to stick with us because we will undoubtedly be doing the same thing, although hopefully a better version of what we did this year. Next year at E3. And we'll probably do stuff for Gamescom and the Game Awards and all that jazz as well, because this is always good fun. Thank you very much for joining us. If you liked what you heard here, you can feel free to show us some support, whether it be by liking the show or subscribing to it so that you don't miss anything that we post, whether that be on YouTube or iTunes. We post at 6:30 every Monday in the evening and much, much earlier that day on iTunes, so you can catch it on your way to work. If you do enjoy this, we are on all the social channels, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, at Games Upcast, on all of them. And we will see you next week for a much more regular episode of the show with news and topics and indie games and good stuff galore. Thanks very much for joining us. And until next time, the game is well and truly up.